All right, Steve, who are we wearing today?
You know what? My family bought me some new gear for the birthday just the other day. But more importantly, I've still got, oh, where's that going?
Well, it's
Where's,
your headphones is blocking the magnificence of is that a fleece cap or is it cotton or what is it?
yeah, that's a knit. That's just a knit. That's a
It's a
cotton.
net. No, but
Yeah.
okay, you might have to take the headphones off so that we can see the functionality of your targeting device. Okay, we got the boba, we got the Mando mask there. Okay, yep, and then we got the flip down targeting, which has its own fan following from recent episodes. And yeah, you've got all the bling, all the Mando, Boba Fettish used to be my dad's armor, Jango Fett bling.
You know what I noticed today in this episode? When the guy that they're busting out of the chop shop of the New Republic chop shop,
Migs
um,
Mayfield, Bill
Migs
Burr,
Mayfield, he
aka.
he walks out there and he goes, "Oh, I thought you looked like somebody else that I knew."
Right. I thought
And
you were somebody else.
and and you know what, Boba's he's must have like someplace stashed in the slave one. He's got some paint because he polished up his gear. It was looking fine.
He is looking straight out of the packaging. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
Like just post mint condition. Like maybe shouldn't have taken it out of the package and played with it because now you drove off the lot and depreciation has gone into full effect, y'all.
well, and I will also notice like the one spot that's supposed to be the
Yeah.
dent, like, it's painted over. He's got some pride. He's back there definitely polishing his boots and making sure things look good. Now look at you with the Empire cardigan that
Well,
you're
this
wearing today.
this is this is
Ooh,
a Nordic nod
oh,
to the
that's nice.
role that TIE fighters played from the beginning to the end of this last episode as they laid there in the scrap pile. Interesting
Hmm.
contrast having these Imperial stormtroopers and Migs Mayfield, who is now working in a scrapyard of TIE fighters and such.
Yeah,
And then
in
at the end of the episode, the TIE fighters
7.
come swooping in, fully functional under the radar. So I thought, oh, and Steve, I will admit, I just told this to my wife. This this is my most hideous Christmas sweater, in my opinion, or winterish type sweater. I know. The thing is, it's maroon and then like an off kind of white ivory. It doesn't go with anything. There's no undershirt. So I just went back to Boba this week because it's green and then it's maroon. It's not even red. Like, what do you, unless you're a Brisbane Broncos National Rugby League team fan and you're into the maroon, what else are you going to wear with this? There's nothing that matches it. But this is my pride and joy from a couple of Christmases ago. Okay. So you got
Wow,
you take them high, I'll take them low.
that's right. That's
Yep,
right.
we're covered.
You are fit to be tied.
Wow, that was full
That was
on dad
terrible.
cringe punniness. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
My
great.
wife explains that puns are the lowest form of humor. So
Steve,
this is,
this is a place where you're safe with all of your punditing.
I may be the reason we never get a sponsor. Hey, we're still looking for sponsors.
No, we
If
don't. We don't want sponsors. We are underground. We are underground. We have a minimal listener and viewership, mostly no listenership because it's not audio, it's only video. And you know what I was thinking the other day? This is how Wayne and Garth started out. They were
oh,
like the original
yeah.
podcasters on a local TV channel that nobody watched. This is how they started out. There's a million K-Dubs and Carlsbads out there that are just
Mhm.
doing it for the love of the game, not because we need sponsorship, but because we just are mandoed out, mandoed up, and ready to roll.
We only have 9,000, like 982 or 80 so more of these episodes. Because isn't it something like you do something 10,000 times and you become like the Beatles? Like you
Yeah.
got to play a lot of these small shows, and then
Or
things figure it out.
we just need 982 more people to subscribe on our YouTube channel, and then we can monetize this. So
Yeah,
thank you
that's
to
true.
the 8 people that are early adopters. You've come in at the basement, sub basement, Actually,
Yes.
we have like a secret laboratory, much like
Hmm.
the Empire is operating right
Hmm.
now.
We are on a
Um,
remote base. We
we're
just consider us as a remote, like abandoned base that no one thinks
Yep,
is got
remote
value.
R and
But time and
D.
time again,
There's
yeah.
nothing on that planet. There's nothing to redeem or of value.
Hmm.
And here we are, ready to talk about the Mando
Yes. The
season 2 chapters. What chapter are we on? 16, 15?
I think we're on chapter 15. That sounds
Chapter
about right.
15. Um, and it's the Believer, which
Yeah.
I am excited to dig into
Once
that
again,
because where
once
do we take
again, that
this? Where do we apply this?
once again, who's the believer?
Mhm, mhm.
And once again, they keep taunting us and tempting us with all of these themes that we've talked about. The child, and all of the classic ties to your walk with the Lord.
Well, and in speaking of the child in this episode, no appearance. The child is
Right.
nowhere to be found.
Right.
We are on a side quest to accomplish the real quest of getting Grogu to the Jedi, which I have the scene from this episode pulled up, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's Mayfield and Mando in the stormtrooper outfit
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
Juggernaut, and they're having it's this conversation where Mayfield's kind of like chiding Mando about what he really believes and why he does what he really does. To me,
Mm-hmm.
it's the integral like faith practice conversation that I want to get into when we get there in the sequence of talking through the episode, which we have a hard stop today with the Seahawks, so we better get on this. You better get
Oh
on
yeah,
this
we'll
train
get
and
on.
roll.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm ready to do it. Ready to talk a little bit. Inmate 34667, or as you said, Miggs Mayfield.
What's your designation, soldier? What's your TK number?
Oh man, quite another moment where
Woo!
we are like identifying that Mando is not quick on his feet. He may be
Yeah.
quick with the fists, but he is not a quick thinker. He is not
No,
a stalker at all.
the bro needs a Netflix subscription or a Disney Plus subscription so he can go back and watch the cartoon versions of the Clone Wars and figure out some TK numbers that aren't already taken and then roll those out because Mix Mayfield was Johnny on the spot.
I wonder, do you know? I'll have to do some research on this. I always come with these great ideas once we're live.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a place out there where they're like selling registered TK numbers, like just how they this time of year people end up buying stars or portions of like land in I don't know Wales or Ireland that no one can actually claim, but like they're selling square yards or naming stars after
Right.
people and
Right.
stuff. I'm wondering if there's an official registry out there that you can buy yourself a TK number because that would be pretty cool.
My wife would hate that for Christmas.
We would, I think you buy it for your wife for Christmas, and inevitably, when it ends up not being used, you re-register it for you about 9 months later after it hasn't been, activated. So just a thought.
Said all hunters everywhere when they purchased a firearm for their wife so that they could go hunting together.
Yep. Yeah. If it wasn't pink when you purchased it, it was for you. So where we start, they're heading to Morak, right? Isn't that they're busting them out of the chop shot, and Marshall Dune takes control.
Have you heard of Morak before?
I've not heard of Morak, but once again, it seems like we go to a society where they have the ability to lay that he points out, like Miggs points out, people are oppressed everywhere.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's New Republic or if it was the Empire.
They don't care who the good guys or bad guys are. Bad things are happening to them where they lived. This is an intriguing part of the episode too. I think there's some geopolitical things here that you could really look into on how lines change and alliances change, and now this person's running this country, and so your country's aligned with them, but now that changed over. Or this person's in office, and but the people that are caught in the middle, they're the ones that really suffer, and they kind of bring that to light in this episode. But
And it's like they don't really see much of a difference between one or the other, and that you see different points of view of the leaders trying to justify their stuff. Like Valen Hess tries to justify it by saying they want structure. What did he say?
he was a great bad guy. I feel like I've seen him someplace else and really didn't like him there either.
They don't want freedom. They want order.
Order.
And that's how he justified
The first order.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was thinking when I saw that. And here we have Miggs, who's going through this transformation, and he's picking up on this. Like, okay, I've now had some time to chop spare like parts of wrecked TIE fighters and chop them in half. I've had some time to think about like the impact on the families and what happened.
He's dealing with the broken pieces of the machine that he used to be a part of.
Yeah, is it Burnin' Corn and the events that happened there, and that he was a cog in that big wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I noticed that at his first kind of view on the screen, he's still got this surly edge to him in his character. He's, Bill Burrs is bringing that comedic kind of surliness, that spice.
Yeah.
But as he begins to interact with these previous characters, it feels like the edge has been knocked off a little bit. Like it's a little bit smoother. Like he's a little bit more tentative. He's not quite as quick with his tongue. But it's not that I felt like it wasn't that he couldn't be, or that it made the character more interesting to me. Because I felt like in the episode where they're breaking people out of the New Republic prison frigate or whatever that thing was, prison ship, that every time you turn around, this guy is lashing out. He wasn't as lashy this time, but he was quick-witted, and some of it really rested on, what's the sheriff's name? What's her?
Marshall Dune?
Yeah, Marshall Dune. Is it just me? And I don't go into shows looking for this, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I even thought this, but is it just me, or does he maybe have a thing for her? Because he calls her out a couple times, and she looks at him like, it's not happening. Why are you talking about me? Yeah. But I'm just wondering if there's something that's percolating below the surface there.
It does make you wonder
Unlikely.
I don't know that this is going to be the last episode we see him. But it is, there's some unanswered questions. I thought it was interesting. He asked some really uncomfortable questions and calls people out. And you can almost see that his shtick, his normal operating things, is he's probed and he's been able to push other people's buttons. So when Mando isn't, when he's not easily manipulated, I think that's the standard practice for Miggs, is that he's able to manipulate people and have them question themselves and get them on tilt. Where when he and Mando, once again, Mando's sitting in a conversation where somebody's trying to tell him how they're the same. And Mando, I think, truly still believes, I don't have anything in common with you, But I'm as a watcher, as a viewer, I'm looking at it going, dude, you're so blind, because Miggs is really making it. I don't like the point that he's making, because I like Mando better than Miggs, and I want Mando to be the good guy and Miggs to be the bad guy. Yep.
But Mando's intentionally aligned himself with Miggs as a means to an end. That's very utilitarian, right? I need you for this, and so we're gonna be friends for just, not even friends. We're just gonna be frenemies for just a little bit. But there's this philosopher that comes crack-a-lacking out of Miggs, and he starts leaning into, unnecessarily, because he could just have a nice, quiet, pirate, explosive, and infested ride to the base. Instead, he chooses to lean in to Din Djarin just a little bit and figure out, what's making things tick up there. And this conversation on the screen where he says, is it that, he's like, what is it? What is
the rule?
Yeah. What is the rule? Let me roll back. Let me just rewind here to where Mando says, I'll go. Nobody else could go. Nobody else could take one of these juggernauts because they were going to be identified by the New Republic. But Mando thinks he's not going to be identified. The stormtroopers are wearing helmets, so he needs to keep a helmet on. He clearly identifies that he's going to cover his face. It's not about taking off his Mando helmet that Bill Burr's criticizes him for. He says it earlier in the episode. It's, and I'll have my face covered. And I'm not going to show my face or something like that.
But he's already in on the idea of, like, for him, it's not an idea of they have to be successful. He has no plan B in this. Like,
and it's in the service of the quest for the child.
Right.
Yeah.
A couple of people have to go in there. Everyone else has been disqualified. I'm the only one. Well, of course, I see that they've got these new cool gray outfits that I had never seen.
Not very durable, as it turns out, but they are cool.
Exactly. And I thought that was like emphasized during the episode of how that there's different levels. You can look like you're an armored soldier, and you can present yourself as a trooper, but the reality is does it hold up to these sticks that
once you go Beskar, you can't go back. That's the moral of the armor story there.
Yeah. So and they start to have these conversations of asking about, like, what is this gray area, and that maybe both of them are operating in the gray. And I think we have to remember that, like, when we're sharing our Christianity, a lot of people want to have precise, specific lines that you can't go.
Rules that you follow.
Yeah.
You either do or you don't. There's no in between. There's no spectrum. It's either this or it's that. It's never either or it's always either or. It can't ever be both and you got Migs, who is like, I live in the gray. I'm comfortable in the gray. I've embraced my identity in the gray. And Mando, who's black and white, and gray does not exist on our palette scheme here. And you never ever take off your helmet. But now we never ever show our face. And
so which is it?
Yeah. So here's the kind of foothold for me, and the little nugget from kind of a faith Christian perspective, is the differences between the essentials and non-essentials, which I'm sure we've mentioned before, and to put it in more like churchy theological stuff, doctrine and dogma. Doctrine are these defining things that the Christian church has said, we collectively believe these things, and these define who we are and unite us as followers of Christ. Dogma are the different nuances, right? And I feel like Migs is leaning into the dogma. Which is it? You can't cover your face, or you can't take off your Mando helmet. There's been this deconstruction of Din Djarin's kind of processing of his faith and his identity, coming from his creed, to the point to where he makes these little compromises that don't diminish the doctrine, but they don't allow the dogma, these rules that have been made up by infinite beings, by humans, or people in general, to dictate the circumstances. It's like when Jesus said, they called him out for his disciples doing stuff on the Sabbath, and Jesus said, the Sabbath, this man wasn't made for the Sabbath was made for man. And so, do you work on Sundays, or do you not work on Sundays? Which is a really interesting question to ask a pastor. If you're going to be legalistic about it. And Mando is moving from this place of legalism within his operation of the creed to where now I sense it becoming more relational, to where he has a creed that is his core, but he's able to adapt given the circumstances, which to me is different than Miggs's accusation of, once you're desperate, there's a whole bunch of things you're willing to do that you wouldn't have done before. There is a line to cross. So I felt like that was an unfair judgment on Miggs's part, but I could see why he would make it from his grayscale perspective. But I think it's an important question for Christians to ask. of why do you believe what you believe? And within what you believe, why do you do what you do about what you believe? That's what's being challenged by Mando. And it's really the first time that we see a big compromise on his part, where he keeps the doctrine but adjusts the dogma.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that he goes back to, I think it's some of it. It becomes clear in the very last scene where he is talking about, "You will never know how much that child means to me," and I think that Mando has had time to contemplate and let it marinate, like what he feels his current purpose is, and that he's moved on from someone that just makes a living in this world by bringing in bounties and increasing the quality of his armor and the bells and whistles on
keeping up with the Joneses.
Razor, yeah, the old Razor Crest. He's got a specific hurt. Yeah.
I know. Still getting over the tragedy.
Yeah, and that he's got a purpose now, and that he's something to defend.
Yeah, and so his identity really is being made within that relationship with Grogu as well. And the absence of that in this episode is I watched the whole thing. I thought this was pretty cool, but I feel like something's missing and I'm a little slow. And so it wasn't until the third time through I'm like, oh, I've been used to Baby Yoda being a centerpiece, and just stealing the screen anytime he's on there with whatever, if it's just a gesture or a glance. And some of the antics that he got up to. So he's a real missing element here in the episode. But yeah, Mando's identity has been changed in that relationship while he's also amending how he goes about practicing his creed. But I think that I think I can twist that to line up with what Jesus did. Anytime Jesus was accused of not keeping the law, it was in error of and in the service of honoring relationship, loving God with all you are and your neighbor as yourself. Anytime. And he's keeping the law, just not the letter, the dogma of the law that particular sect wanted him to keep. Be like us. If you're going to get it right, then you have to be like us, and you have to do it like us, and you have to say it like us, and you have to look like us. And he is getting, he is reforming, reshaping, reprocessing how he lives out that creed. It's really fascinating to me. There's some important stuff that they're delving into here that you could just write off as it's just a sci-fi show. But there's some depth to it.
Yeah, because it's not just it's referring to kind of no one can keep all of the rules of the law. Eventually, you are going to fall short.
Right.
So we're lucky there's that grace where we can have a relationship and understand that there is grace. And
so who's the believer?
That's a great
question. Who's the believer in this episode? I've asked a few different people. I've gotten different surprising perspectives, but I'm interested in yours, Steve.
I think the believer is Mando. I think Mando does at the end of the episode, he calls his shot in a very similar way. As me and my daughter were watching it on Friday morning, immediately after the episode was done, it was like 7:05, okay, and I have to head out to work around 7:15, 7:20 on Friday morning. We went back and we watched, I watched like season 1, episode 7 or so, and we watched a scene where it's very similar to Moff Gideon calling his shot and saying, "I'm coming for you. I'm gonna recoup that kid." So I think it's Mando that is the believer, because he now that he's been separated from Grogu, he realizes, okay, that that little dude is a big part of my heart. That little dude has become a new like identity, and what he represents is more important to me than I realized.
Mm. So,
What's your theory?
well, I've got a few different theories. I want to float one I heard by you, but just um, tracking off of what you just dropped here. Um, is it that he's got a something to believe in and pursue beyond himself? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's to pursue and a quest because he has a creed and he has a belief, but because of that, he's on this quest. He accepted responsibility for Grogu from the Beskar Smith
Mhm.
because of their common creed together.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just assumed going into it that Mando was probably the believer, and it's more a refining and redefinition of who he is as a believer. Laseo and I were talking this morning. I texted you, and dude,
Mhm.
he's first of all, he's been watching The Mandalorian. And second of all, he's been tracking with us in some of our conversations here. So maybe he's one of those 8 subscribers. I don't know. We've got,
Maybe he's subscriber 2, 7, and 8.
I don't know what his TK designation is, but I mean, I'm happy with however many numbers it is. You know, the more the merrier. But he wondered if it was Dune's belief in Mayfield.
I could see that, and I'm also wondering if it's Mayfield, because Mayfield is the one that has a massive transformation during this episode. He Mayfield gets to receive an incredible, he gets to have an attitude of gratitude at the end, where he was just bargaining, like, okay, I know this is the right thing. I know that I owe Mando, like someplace deep down.
You're
I
gonna
was,
kill me now? He's so
yeah,
sheepish.
yeah, and then
Sorry, I broke your window.
yeah,
Oh.
and that he was gonna like he was he thought he was gonna die at one point, but then I don't think he even, like, towards the end of the episode was even believing that he would achieve like freedom, like that was even on the table.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool to see um people like to be free from stuff, you know. They like to be shown the grace that he was shown. So
Well, and earlier on, before they even talk about, going to Morak, or while they are, he asks, what's in it for me if he helps him out. She's like, a better view. He didn't
yeah.
push back on. I mean, he thought about it for a second. He didn't push back on it. It's better. Like, that's a better position than the one that I was in chopping up TIE fighters before. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it. Like, I
Yeah.
thought about like how degraded your your everyday sense of well-being must be, that if I could just get a window in my cell, or if I could
Right.
get 20 minutes of yard time, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to fight for that. I'm going to do everything that I can over this next year to earn that better view. And so he's like, okay. So he didn't really have anything to lose, because you could either be in the scrapyard or you could be on the ship and going to do something that might actually make a difference. But Mayfield actually gets some like bonus retribution in this episode,
Right.
and gets to
Exactly. I think
wipe.
by the end.
Yeah, there again, story of redemption. If you just took Mayfield's arc in this
Mm-hmm.
episode and looked at where he's been before, where he is in this episode, and where the episode goes, still got some stuff to work on, still got some aggro issues when it comes to using a blaster on, spur of the moment, but redemption arc. Um, Even if it means blowing up a juggernaut and killing some troopers that may or may not be in service because they want to be, but he's going to pull the
Yeah.
trigger.
Yeah. I felt like I think he felt a similar connection as Mando did to the rather depressed, like, teenagers that he saw on the side of the road.
Hmm.
And he was able to have some moments of redemption there at the end. And that was almost like thrown in as a bonus that he got to see. I honestly think it was like a vendetta against Valen Hess, that he take not only that guy, but he also then, by him shooting and destroying that plant, he's taking out all of the other Valen Hesses that he hasn't met, but believe in that same way, that were on that planet. And
And oppressing the people there.
And oppressing the people there. And I think that, yeah, he went through that transformation of he had to be confronted with, yeah, it's a tragedy that I've lost all of my other troopers, that everyone that was anybody to me at a time has been taken away by this system of oppression. And although I can't solve everything, very similar. You ever hear the story about the little kid that they walk up on the beach and there's all these starfish that have been washed up on the shore, and the kid picks up the one, and the dad is looking at it, and it's like, and kid picks up one and throws it back in, and dad is just like overwhelmed by the odds of how many starfish would have to be thrown back in, and the kid is like, well, I made a difference to that one. And that whole concept of not being so overwhelmed that you don't make an impact in your current situation in your world. So
okay, that was a deep thought, and I'm not going to demean it in any way, but he takes that one shot with a Tuscan cycler rifle, and it's like the least likely weapon that you would choose in a high-tech situation to make the vital shot, and he demolishes the entire plant with that one shot, and then he gets this kind of nod from Sheriff Dune, like, nice one.
Well, okay, here's a couple of factors to buy into things. He is like listed and described as a sharpshooter.
Okay.
And that rifle also has belonged in the care of an individual that I have a lot of trust in, being Boba Fett. And
That's
I have
true.
a feeling that rifle is rather zeroed, and is at peak performance, and it may actually be flying under the radar to mislead you about the technology.
But I like that, because we know all those things about him. And now we're not on the Razor Crest anymore. We're on Slave One, and we have no clue the arsenal that's actually available there. But I'm thinking with Boba and the resources that he magically, that he has available to him, like that spatial mine space blue bomb thing that went off and like took out. I thought, did the sound cut off with the TV? And no, that's just, it sucked all of not only the air, but also all like noise out of creation in that space.
I love how they string us along and they just show us just like a little peek behind the curtain every once in a while of like, oh, you're dealing with Boba Fett.
Right.
That's what you're dealing with now. And you have no idea like
what is up that dude's sleeve,
Oh yeah.
So knowing all that, Miggs looks and he goes, hand me that cycler rifle. It wasn't hand me the rifle. It had to be a cycler rifle, because then you knew which one to pick. Out of the arsenal, this is the one that he wants to make this shot. The dude, he knows which weapon to utilize for the situation. He knows which tool is going to be best. And I kind of like that. Okay, Steve, just a side note here. I just want to do a little public service announcement for our listeners, is that obviously I'm Abstract Random. I think I'm aware though that you actually write down notes. Like you have notes and you write them down and you like look at them and stuff, right?
Occasionally.
I do that. I do that too. The first couple episodes, I remember I was like sending you notes and like I had it all detailed out and everything. And then I just went, you know what? I'm doing this because I like Mando, and Steve and I are friends and we love talking about it. And I want it to just be like a conversation for me. And so I love it that you like have notes and you can keep us concrete sequential, but I also like it that you're willing to jump like all over the board. And I have a hard time keeping up sometimes, but I like the flow. It's like being at our church on Sunday mornings, just in passing. We're like, hey, did you see Mando? Yeah. What about this? Yeah. What about this? What about this? But we do it for like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. Well, that being said, then I've got some, what we'll call Easter eggs, some different things like, did you see this? I don't have an answer for this. I need to get your reaction on it.
Okay.
For one, once again, Mando and his communication. So they're in the Juggernaut. They've taken over the Juggernaut, and Mando has got his new gray trooper thing on, and he's still got using the voice box, and he's not tempted by Miggs to take his helmet off, but Miggs has his helmet on for less than like a minute. Okay.
Hates it.
And I get it from a cinematography. You need to know who's talking to who. He hates it. But when Mando ends up having to climb up on the top to fend off the local raiders that are there, how can he still hear him and communicate? Once again, there seems to be a little breakdown. Like, does he have a different communicator that is like on his chest gear, or like how are they communicating?
Is it built into the helmet?
Well, that's what I would assume. But
it must be.
One individual doesn't have the helmet on, is he hearing it echo from the floor where he set his helmet down?
Bluetooth, bro. It's in the Juggernaut.
Oh,
I just feel dumb because I didn't even think of this. This is a disconnect here, and I didn't even see it.
So you think it's one of the like a speaker type of thing, like for hands-free driving?
No, no, Steve. It's a TV show.
They've adopted that for safety reasons. When you're transporting Rhydonium, just like when you're driving around Meridian, Idaho, you need to be hands-free.
Rhydonium, Meridian.
Yeah, very similar. Like
hands-free. Otherwise, the New Republic is pulling you over.
Okay. The other thing, when they hopped in the Juggernaut, I thought it was. Did you catch some of the? Miggs is like oriented himself to it, and he's like, "Oh, power coil, motivator," and I couldn't like stop in my head saying, "This one's got a bad motivator." Because
I didn't pull up that quote, but I like it that you did.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, interesting."
No, wait. Okay. What's that from? What is that? Is that from one of the droids?
Yeah, so there was the other droid that was chosen instead of R2-D2 that ends up like
it's outside the Jawas. It was Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
He's like, this one's got a bad motivator.
This one's got a bad motivator. So I was to see that the Juggernaut they got into didn't have a bad motivator.
It had a good one. Nice.
So what are some of the other Easter eggs that I saw? Oh, at the end, Miggs is trying to end the conversation, and once again, like Mando, not good with his like improv stuff. If you're deaf, you have to not answer questions consistently. You can't like act like you don't understand when you don't know your KT number, but you can like he doesn't come up like Miggs has to come up with the name Brown Eyes, that he has lost his hearing. All of these things. Mando's terrible at this. He's got the deer in the headlight look. Like, okay, for the rest of the season, we're gonna just have you put your helmet back on. When it comes to eye contact,
pretty much it's whether the helmet's on or we have eye contact. Pretty much getting the same thing.
Right.
It's just better with the helmet on.
Right, because you can't read those facial expressions.
Okay, so how good is that actor that he can pull that off? Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
he's just pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, I looked up his nationality, Chilean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd forgotten and not realized that it was him, that he was also in another longstanding series as a kind of a side character.
Mm-hmm.
But did you hear the reference? Does a TPS report have any meaning to you? Because it has quite the meaning to me.
No.
Okay, so the Easter egg is that they said, we have to go file some TPS reports. Well, TPS reports were the reports that were talked about in Office Space, the movie, that they are changing, like, if you ever watched the movie Office Space.
I haven't. I don't think I ever have.
They reference TPS reports, and I'll get you a copy of the memo. We're putting, new headings on our TPS reports. So it was fantastic that they were able to work that in there.
Okay.
As a little nugget. I thought that was pretty fantastic. So what were some of the other things I had?
I got a couple too. I don't know what you'd call them Easter eggs, just some observations that I made that were curious to me.
Okay.
For instance, you referred to them as raiders before, but these guys coming in on the air skiffs to attack the Juggernaut, they called them pirates.
Okay.
My historical understanding of pirates is that they're looking to make a profit, not to die in the process, no matter what, and not to keep throwing people at a situation. They weren't trying to steal is it Rhydonium, whatever, Rhydonium? They weren't trying to steal it. Yeah. They were just trying to blow it up, which I don't see the profit in that unless someone's paying them to make
Right.
sure that they blow it up. Also, I was super curious about the species because they drive through the village and they're like human-like looking.
Right, completely different.
It's
Like
a different, if it's a different
some
species.
sort of coalition, or what is going on there?
I looked into that.
Okay.
Now I didn't
Talk
look
to me.
super deep. But I did look into it, and this is, from what I can tell, it's actually an unnamed species, and the only name they give to it is a first and last name, and I can't exactly remember it, but of a character that showed up in the tragedy that was on one of the like warrant reports for prisoners that Sheriff Dune was looking at on her computer. Same species. But I don't know if we're ever going to have an answer, but you've got this planet. We know that there's a humanoid, there's these human looking characters in the villages that are being oppressed. Doesn't matter who's doing the oppressing, they're being oppressed. But then we have these pirates that aren't looking for any profit. They're just looking to blow stuff up. And we don't know what species they are. They're unnamed. But from what I could tell from my just cursory look, they are indigenous to the planet, while the humans have immigrated there. They've migrated there, maybe for opportunity, maybe just to resettle or whatever. But that.
Well, I would assume that they have like a equal opportunity oppression. Like if you don't feel like you're oppressed on your home world enough, that they have this like these different opportunities where they will the Empire will transplant you to a different planet so that you
we'll
can
find you there. Yeah, we would love
we-
to oppress you in mining or just pillaging
need
the resources.
you.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So they called them pirates, but pirates are looking for profit, and these guys are just throwing themselves in. They're basically cannon fodder. And so that was a little bit weird to me because it just left the question of what is their motivation to be blowing these up and making sure that they don't make it to the Imperial base. And then the quick switch that happens and you don't even really notice it, where you begin cheering for the Empire, where I found myself like, I want the Empire to win this day because Mando and Miggs are dressed up like the Empire. I don't even really like Miggs, but I want him to win today, and we need the Empire to help them win. But then it kind of shows this, whoever you're in the foxhole with, that's your brother, that's your sister, that's your family. And so whatever side you're on, people are looking at some things. It just comes down to who is next to you, who are you in the trenches with, who you're fighting with. And Miggs, from a faith perspective, he brought this up in the Juggernaut as well. If you're born on Mandalore or you're born on Alderaan and you believe different things, it doesn't matter because neither one of them exists now. And I think this comes up in the faith journey when people go, well, what if I'd been born in a different country, in a different culture, in a different context where they have a different religion? How would I know any different? How would I know any better? And a lot of times this is where Christians will bring up, and I'm not saying that it's an improper perspective, but that's why we send missionaries. But there's also been a lot of things that have gone wrong by sending missionaries to places that are focused on just getting a message across and not leaning into the relationship to be the message, and sharing the love of Christ and God's grace through that way and his hope. And so I thought that was a very interesting question that lingered there too, of I don't have any control over who raised me or what I was brought up in, but there comes a point of decision where we choose to believe what we believe and have to decide what those reasons are. And Mando's really on that continuing journey and arc with that. But I kind of diverged back into the faith conversation from what are these two species, human and humanoid, on this planet, and why are they there? And I don't, we're moving on from Morak now, I bet, next episode. So we may never know. But it was an inconsistency in the storyline for me.
Yeah, and I guess, but it does ask that question of, it comes back to, we can't control what happens to us. We can only control what our reaction to true. That is. One of the other questions that it's not on a very deep level at all, but
we do it all here.
I felt like Miggs felt no compulsion. Like all of his training had been pushed aside, because as they're rolling back in, he's not like, oh, I should get my hat back on. Like when people people are driving along in their car and then they get out and you're supposed to put a mask on. He has no compulsion to like, oh yeah, I guess I like for some decorum. And I just was wondering, those guys that were saluting him, the different troopers and stuff, like how did they feel? Like were they like, oh yeah, I want to be one of those juggernaut, I want to like work my way up to be a juggernaut driver, because guess what? Those guys get to take their helmets off whenever they want to.
That's right. High risk, high reward.
Right. Versus you, we've established previously from the Empire, you have to be granted the opportunity to remove your helmet. Because Captain Phasma is definitely a stickler on TK-247. Why did you remove your helmet? And
I thought when I saw, I'm going to say her, because I always think it's a woman that's Captain Fat.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. That I thought she was an android or a robot, because that's that.
Oh no,
she's
got a fantastic backstory. If you ever have time during the off season to read the book Captain Phasma, it's a great insight to the planet that she came from. The other thing is that I thought it was interesting. I think that they didn't. They must have like limited how much charge. I felt like the blaster that that Mando.
It's not unlimited.
Right. Like that's the first time that it's like
me too.
They had him on the Barney Fife program. Like, we're going to give you about 6 or 7 shots, but nothing that will like really let you get into too much trouble here. Be honest on,
he needed his bandolier right then.
Morak might be considered the equivalent of Mayberry. And they don't really want them going into these villages and shooting the places up. So they limited him to only about 6 shots, which I thought was. Like,
and then he throws it, which is so classic.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's like resourceful, and I love he gets finally to the point that they keep doing this, like episode after episode. He gets to the point where he's like, okay, I'm gonna go like old Irishman. I've got my Dukes.
No, he was just like
take on the rest of you pirates.
Yeah.
And then finally,
they have thermal detonators, and he's raising his fist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They've all clicked into the thermal detonators. They're ready for their last stand. And he's like this. And once again, they have each time it's a different person that is saving him. If we could go back and review like all the different people that have saved him, there's been like Mandalorians have saved him. The New Rebel Alliance has saved him from the spiders.
Grogu has saved him.
Grogu saved. Yeah, exactly. There's been, just time and time again. I love how they get us to this crescendo, and then he got to save some people with the Razor Crest, rest in peace. And at one point, so I once again, I still love this show so much. And actually, you know what I love more about the show is that I know that I get to discuss it with a true friend afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, I got 2 more things, and I know we're butting up against a Hawks game here, so I'm going to get you out of here. But here they are. Number 1, the Empire really needs to work on their 2-factor authentication because Mando's face was not flagged. Somehow, he knew that his face, when scanned, was not going to be flagged, and I didn't really think critically about that, but I asked my son, Parker, about this. And he just without hesitation went, well, it's probably because he was part of the Empire before. And I was like, what? How dare you? But then I started thinking, Steve, could that be? Could Mando have been in the system so that his face would have been recognized as a part of the Empire? Otherwise, why wasn't it flagged?
Other than that, this is a guy we sold, what is it? Like what they call the Razor Crest, excess.
Surplus.
Surplus, yeah. Like that, maybe they're keeping track of who they sell their surplus to.
Maybe. Okay. That could be. And then the last thing that I have, that's a plausible explanation, is the rumor confirmations that Mace Windu has been confirmed for being a part of the Mandalorian series.
Now, have they leaked like which season?
Today. Now this is total rumor because it's second, third hand. Lasejo told me that he has online confirmation that it's season 3. And so that leads back to our speculation that you surfaced about Boba facing Windu as
Oh,
the slayer
classic.
of Jango Fett.
That's classic Mando.
Star Wars fandom wants it.
To have two, like, let's get them in a room. Let's make it feel uncomfortable.
This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way.
This needs to be the way. And I think when I asked the question, what is the way today? Well, there was a lot of different ways that we went, but Mando is finding his way within his creed and how to apply it in the wide world galaxy that he lives in. He lives and plays in. By having to be confronted with the question of what is the way and what defines the way. And I think that that's something that we get to do every day as followers of Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
are we ending there, or do you have any last thoughts on the episode that, and just, I mean, take a quick glance at the notes. Don't leave any stone unturned here.
No, I just have that, that final shot. We all have to like sleep at night. That Miggs, after taking that shot, he's going to be able to sleep better that night than he had in a long time.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. His redemption story is a little bit different than a lot of people's, where, they maybe would just stop killing people altogether. He just doesn't kill as many people and kills the right people in his estimation rather than the wrong people. Yeah.
Exactly.
Good old Miggs.
Well, this is the way.
This is the way, my friend. See you next time, bro. Have a good week and go Hawks.
You also. Bye.
Bye.
Go Hawks.